Hey guys, it's Mike here, and welcome to another edition of Dragon Ball Super Reviews, which I'm going to be reviewing Dragon Ball Super Episode 22, and then predicting what will happen in Dragon Ball Super Episode 23. Well, a lot of stuff happened on Dragon Ball Super this week, and there's a lot of stuff to talk about. So without further ado, let's get started. So basically what happened in this episode of Dragon Ball Super was a carryover from what happened in the last week. Basically, the fight with 1,000 soldiers continued, and Frieza's new #1 henchman Tagoma stepped in to fight the Z Fighters. And basically what happened next was a complete and total slaughter, as Piccolo flew in to fight Tagoma, punched him in the face, and Tagoma completely no-sold it, having it done 0 damage whatsoever to him. Tagoma then proceeded to rip Piccolo's arm right off and knock him out, and then fought all the other Z Fighters and knocked them out too. But just when everything seemed incredibly dire, Gotenks showed up and headbutted Tagoma right in the balls, sending him to the ground reeling. However, unfortunately and illogically, Gotenks immediately defused, even though there's no way in hell it should have been 30 minutes at that point in time. But of course, this seemed like it was all setting up the scene in which Frieza actually saw Goten and then Trunks. And he actually recognized Trunks, seeing him as the one who actually killed him before, and became incredibly enraged. And thus, he immediately ordered Tagoma to go after them. However, there was other plans and other things going on at the moment, as the Frog Captain Ginyu showed up. In a very interesting and strange turn of events, Captain Ginyu actually wrote down the Change Now incantation on the ground with his feet, which led to Tagoma saying change and then both of them switching bodies, with Captain Ginyu now taking his form, getting far more powerful than he ever had before, and doing his pose to show Frieza that he was back. Now, of course, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense that Captain Ginyu was able to immediately take over this body and then use its form or power to utmost abilities, especially because the fact that it seemed like he was even stronger than he was before as normal Tagoma. And the reason for this is simply because the fact that Captain Ginyu had so much trouble adapting to Goku's body, to the point where he was actually able to get beaten down for a period of time by Krillin and Gohan. So him immediately having control over this body seems a little bit far-fetched, but I guess that's what they're going with, and it's Dragon Ball Super after all. So certainly they don't normally care that much about continuity, just about the entertainment factor. But at this moment, he was about to fight the other Z Fighters when we cut to this other alternate dimension. This dimension which we sent Goku and Vegeta to train, and we see them floating around in these misty fogs. We don't exactly know what it is, but it seems like it's actually hurting them with their energy out, until Vegeta smartly realizes to do what Whis had told him to do, to keep his ki within his body. And at that point, it seems like it stops affecting them in a negative way. But then we go back, of course, to see Tagoma versus Gohan, and Gohan turns into a Super Saiyan. And at this point, Gohan seems to immediately start dominating Tagoma. Now, at this point, it makes me kind of feel that, considering that it seemed almost like Gohan was stronger than Piccolo at this point in time in his base form, I feel like basically Gohan did not become as weak as a lot of people are saying he did, but rather, instead, he's able to bring out all of his mystic power, or at least a large bulk of it, in his Super Saiyan form, which explains why he was basically able to utterly dominate and defeat Tagoma in the way that he did and the fashion that he did. Considering the fact that Tagoma was effortlessly destroying every one of the Z Fighters, including Gohan in his base, he clearly must be an incredibly powerful opponent around Buu's level. And so Gohan trashing him the way he did only makes sense if he has access to some of that mystic power remaining in his Super Saiyan form. But at this point, Frieza stepped in because he saw that Gohan was a Super Saiyan and proceeded to start shooting holes through his body, torturing him, tormenting him, because he hated Goku and he hated Gohan being another Super Saiyan. And eventually, at the climax of this episode, Frieza, primed and ready, was going to kill Gohan with a final finger blast, when suddenly, just like what happened on Namek, just like what happened with Nappa, Piccolo jumped in front of Gohan, his surrogate son, to stop the blast with his own body. And it almost looks certainly like Piccolo was dead at the climax of this fight. So it's going to be very interesting to see if it will be. Thus far with this episode and with this arc in general, to be honest, I'm actually liking it more than I did the movie. The thing is, with the movie, I thought it was too illogical with all of the action that happened. It was too poorly written, and there wasn't enough emotional investment to actually enjoy this fight, and to actually enjoy Frieza coming back to life. But thus far, all the things that they're actually adding is adding to the benefit of this series, and of course the story being told. It is a very good way that they're adding these things, and I'm very much enjoying enjoying it. I'm enjoying Tagoma's story. I'm enjoying seeing some of that stuff with Frieza training. And of course, I'm enjoying seeing Captain Ginyu back, and then Piccolo jumping in a very emotional and invested way because he loves Gohan and he doesn't want him to die. So for this episode, I definitely have to give a hand to Toei and to the people that are actually writing it, because I thought that this episode was very well done. Although I wasn't the biggest fan of the way that they immediately had Captain Ginyu take over Tagoma. I wish that maybe there was an entire episode of Tagoma dominating and maybe some more stuff about his backstory before we eventually got him to switch with Captain Ginyu, especially because he's a very interesting character and a villain in Dragon Ball that for once actually has a fleshed out backstory for the most part. But I digress. This episode overall I feel was probably better than last week's and is definitely showing that Super is continuing to grow and develop and become a well-written show. So I'm certainly starting to enjoy that more and more as it goes along, despite all the hiccups that might happen in each episode. But moving on to my predictions, it looks like in the next episode, Goku and Vegeta are going to step into the fight. Just as I predicted earlier, I feel that Vegeta is going to be the one to defeat Tagoma before Frieza steps in, goes into his full power, and fights Goku, and that's just what we seem to be seeing in the next episode preview. And I feel like, for the most part, things are probably going to play out the same way that they did in the movie. But of course, all of that just waits to be seen. Well, my name is Mike, and this has been another edition of Dragon Ball Super Reviews and Predictions. Tell me your own thoughts down below. Did you see this episode yet, and what did you think about this episode if you did? Also, what was your predictions for the next coming episode? Do you agree with mine or do you disagree? Let me know down below. And of course, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And as I always say, stick around because there's a lot more to come in the future.